Hey everyone, how's it going today? I hope you're doing well. So today, I'm laughing to myself, and I decided to record this video really quick because of situation. So essentially, a client calls me and tells me, "Hey Richard, we're looking for a warehouse about 30,000 square feet in the Inland Empire area, maybe like Rancho, Cucamonga, Ontario area." I said, sure, how many docs do you need? They're like, we need 4 docs. Cool. So I search and I found it. I got them a 33,000 square foot industrial warehouse with 4 loading docks and a private yard for $1 per square foot, which is unheard of right now. So essentially, that situation is there's a short-term sublease remaining on that property. Current tenant needs to get out. They want somebody to come in, take over until April of 2024. And at that point, the rent would increase, of course, and that would basically depend on the negotiations with the landlord. So the landlord right now is reviewing my client's financials to see if they qualify, and if they do, then they will counter us and tell us, hey, this is what the rent's going to be after April if you want to do a 3-year lease agreement, blah, 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 right? Moving on. Then he tells me, oh, Richard, by the way, we've got this other warehouse and we need you to help us get us out of the lease. And I was like, okay, well, let me look at the lease agreement and let me look at the property information. I'll see what I can do. I look it up and it's right here. You can see, here it is. It's 12,035 square feet. 12,035 square feet. All right, moving on. Here's the rent term. The problem is they signed a 5-year lease agreement, and it doesn't take a math genius to figure this one out. But check this out. So I did some math, right? And so essentially, if you look at the rate per month, which is starting at $22,144. You divide that by the square footage, which is again we're looking at was it 12,035? Yeah. So that's 12,035. So the first year is $1.83 a square foot compared to the dollar a square foot that I got them. Whatever the increase might be, whether it's $1.10, $1.20, give or take, just giving you an example. They're saving a tremendous amount of money. They're getting a much bigger warehouse with 4 loading docks and accessible truck parking and container storage on a 24-foot ceiling height, tilt up Class A warehouse in Southern California. I found them that deal. But yet the person who got them into this deal won't say any names of what agency it was or who it was, but they pretty much got screwed. So at $1.83 a square foot for the first year, and this was signed in March of this year, so the rates were already coming down. I mean, I've been successful in doing larger deals than that for a lot less money, but I guess it came down to the amount of docks that they have, because they do have like 3 or 4 docks at this warehouse, which is unheard of. So I guess that's the reason why they feel it was worth it. But it truly wasn't, because if you do the math, I mean, it depends. I mean, hopefully there'll be somebody out there who really needs a small warehouse and a lot of docks, but doesn't want to pay for a larger warehouse. So anyway, let's do the math again. 12,035, $1.92 for the second year. I mean, you could just imagine. So you got 24,182 square feet divided by 12,035 square feet. $2 a square foot on the third year, and it just keeps. I mean, this is a bad deal. This is a horrible deal for these guys. These guys are in a lot of trouble. And I haven't read all this, but they got a security deposit. It looks like 1 month of rent, which isn't bad. And then they've got to get consent. Let's keep going here. Common areas. There's a whole bunch of rules here at this park. They have to pay for property expenses. Common area expenses. So I'm praying that rate includes the common area expenses. I pray to God, I hope it does, because if it doesn't, this is just going to get a whole lot harder. So essentially, I found them a solution, but now they have a bigger problem, which is they signed this 5-year lease agreement for this small 12,000 square foot warehouse with 3 or 4 loading docks or whatever the case is, and they've got to figure out a way how to get out of it now. Or code is I have to figure out a way for them to get out of this. And if they signed, which I think they did, a personal guarantee, I doubt that there is an exit strategy here. The only exit strategy I have is a sublet, which it's going to take me a while to find somebody willing to swallow $1.80 a square foot rate for a 12,000 square foot warehouse. It just doesn't. Oh, here's the consent. See. So let's see, a change in control of 50%. Oh, by the way, this is a reason why you guys should have representation. Don't go direct to the listing broker. And then, make sure you discuss the lease in its entirety with your tenant representative who is representing you. They're looking out for your interest, and they're getting you paid by the landlord. So essentially, they should be doing their job and explaining to you the pros and cons of the lease agreement. And most of the time, the lease agreements are drafted in the benefit of the landlord. So the landlord has pretty much all of the rights, all of the benefit of a lease agreement. And in some cases, there is some benefit to the tenant, which is what I try and magnify and focus on, which is you have control of the building for X amount of time, and as long as you follow the rules, pay your rent on time, and don't break the rules, then you should be fine. But there's a lot of ways for the landlord to essentially, quote unquote, claim that you're breaking a rule, or you're breaking the lease agreement. It could be a number of different things, from not carrying the right insurance, general liability coverage, workman's comp, rental, business interruption insurance, and there's also a grade level of insurance carrier that you must have and work with. So if you're working with a below grade level insurance provider, then the landlord can claim that that's a breach of the lease contract, and he could cancel your contract and essentially do whatever he wants with the rate, or ask you to vacate, or begin the process of a formal eviction. There's a lot of things in here that you have to look out for. So my client, or I suggested to my client, let me read through the subletting conditions in this contract. And as I'm reading this one, this landlord obviously had an attorney do this, because this is a custom contract with a lot of language from the traditional AIR, which is a commercial board lease contracts that have been drafted to kind of favor both the tenant and the landlord. But some landlords, most landlords, especially big, REITs, real estate trust, don't like to work with the traditional fair AIR contract. They want to modify it to meet their interest and cover their ass, so to speak. So anyway, reviewing this sublease section, obviously you can't sublet it without the landlord's prior written consent, obviously. But he does have right here absolute discretion. Absolute discretion. So that means you're basically effed, I want to say. Maybe that's a nice way, so I don't have to curse. You're effed, okay? So that's one. If you keep reading, obviously he can't withhold consent unreasonably. So that's a good thing, but this can be construed in many different ways, and he can claim many things. So this is one of the reasons why you read these contracts thoroughly before you sign. Change in control of tenant shall constitute an assignment. So meaning, if you own this company that signed this lease agreement, and 6 months later you sell shares of your company to a new person, and that person controls now more than 50% equity of the business, then you are now in violation of your agreement, because you have to notify the landlord so that they can give consent of this transfer, even though the business entity has nothing to do with the lease contract. So if you sell your business, that's considered transfer of ownership and whatever rights you have of the lease to the building. That's also gets transferred with the new owner, so that needs to be brought to the attention of the landlord and get his blessing so that they can continue or renew, or the landlord can use that as a tool, as a leverage to renegotiate the terms of the lease and maybe even increase the rent on you and do a bunch of stuff, so make your life a living hell. So again, read these contracts carefully so you know what you're getting yourself into, but that's another little point. So let's see here. 30 days written notice, may assign or sublease portion. Okay. I'm trying to read the part where it gives you more details in regards to the sublease terms. And still reading corporate stock, permitted transfer, assignee, blah, 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 here under. Okay. Interesting. So sublease is not effective until landlord gives consent. We already knew that. Liability still is on the tenant who subletting until the landlord gives otherwise instructions. Okay. In the event of default or breach of tenant's obligations under the lease, landlord may proceed directly against tenant and any guarantors, anyone else responsible for the performance of the obligations under the lease, including subtenant, so the subtenant is also going to be held liable. So I mean, this is going to be a long drawn out process, but I figured I'd kind of give you a little bit of insight as to some of these little terms and conditions that you don't see until it occurs. So try and not wait for it to happen, and maybe be preemptive on your actions and be aware that they're there. But you shouldn't have to really read through all this and know all this. You should work with somebody who does. I've always learned to work with people that are smarter than you, because they'll make you smarter and make you more successful. So guys, if you're looking at renting an industrial property, I know that you can find a good deal and negotiate those terms. But do you really want to just leave that in the hands of, I don't know, yourself, or you're gonna pay an attorney to read through this, and he'll love to charge you. What are we charging? Maybe like $300 an hour to read this contract, like I'm doing right now, and I would do it for free for you because the landlord is gonna pay me a commission. So you don't have to do this on your own. You can have help. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.